So, when it comes to planning out our goals and getting ourselves like amped up, fired up to take action, oftentimes we do things like figuring out the steps we need to take, figuring out when we're going to do them, hopefully, figuring out what the actual goal is and kind of like brainstorming what our ideal outcomes are and that kind of a thing. And those are all very important steps. Do not get me wrong, right? I can kind of feel them like integral to the goal planning process. So it can really help us get clarity on what we need to do, when we need to do it, what we're actually hoping for, all of those kind of things. But one part that often gets overlooked, or a part that we sometimes don't give enough attention to, is the fact that challenges are going to happen, right? We're going to face challenges as we try and work on these. Difficulties are going to come up. And if we don't prior plan for those challenges, they can totally derail us. And we don't want that to happen, right? You've set these goals because you want to do them. You want the outcomes associated with them. And we don't want to just have this be another one of those things that we started off with, got partway through and went, oh, too hard. Oh, life happened. Oh, can't do it. And then just like reverted back into what we were doing before. So today we are going to be looking at what I like to call challenge planning. It's essentially looking through the goals that you've got for yourself, considering what possible challenges could come up. Not necessarily the ones that like already are here, though they might also already be here, but the ones that you foresee as possible things that could be holding you back when you start to get to work on these. Because if we actually acknowledge the fact that they might happen and we plan in advance for how we can tackle them or how we can approach them, it means that we can do a lot better in terms of sticking with our goals and all of that kind of thing. Now, if you're following along with the 3 months to change your life challenge, then you know I have quite a list of goals that I'm working on. This is my list of goals. So, like physical health ones, mental health ones, just like personal development kind ones, like reading self help books and starting offline hobbies, decluttering, social goals, finances, and work. Lots of things that I'm working on. I'm not saying that you are working on this many things. In fact, would I recommend this to everybody? No, probably not. But I'm doing the whole bite off more than you can chew and chew it kind of approach, shoot for the moon, land among the stars kind of thing, just to see how much progress I can make. But acknowledging the fact that these are going to have challenges throughout. There are going to be times where it's like, maintain daily exercise being a goal. What if I don't feel like exercising? What if I get injured? What if kind of a thing? If I allow myself to kind of ignore the possibility of those things happening and then I encounter them, I will probably, more likely than not, end up making a choice that isn't really aligned with further progress. It's like essentially giving yourself an out or an excuse to be like, oh, life be life, and guess this goal isn't for me at this point in time. No. All right, we want to do these things. We want to work on them. So thinking about whatever goal it is that you're working on, I would recommend just picking one for the point of this exercise. And I'm going to pick, exercise is a good one to pick. I'll pick that. Right. So I'm going to scoot this goals journal to the side. I've just got this band on it so that then I can hold all of the starting pages together because I use this year after year. So this has previous months and previous year's goals in there. So it makes it easier to open up to the page I actually want to use. But getting a scribble page out. We love the scribble book. It allows our thoughts to be messy. This does not have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be pristine. It just has to be written down because then at least we've got our thoughts out onto paper. All right? Chew for the moon. Yeah, not just sitting on the moon like making new craters. Yeah, if you see a new crater, that was probably me. So let's think about it in terms of our title, which you do not have to title your page, but I will. So then I know what this is when I come back to it later. So challenge planning. You could also call it problem planning, or I know planning for challenges if you want, but I think that challenge planning is the one that I'm going to go with. We'll also zoom you in a little bit so that we can kind of see what we're doing. Good boink. There we go. So the first thing that I like to write down is just the goal again, mainly so that I can keep it there like front and center as I work through these kind of challenge plans, just being able to come back to like, wait a second, what am I talking about? Because we're not trying to think about every single possible challenge that could come up in life because like, whoa, we'll be here for a while. We just want to think about the ones that are going to directly impact making progress on the goal that you're looking at, right? So if we think about it as the goal being daily exercise, which you can pick whichever goal you want, let me know which goal you're going to pick. If you're doing this exercise with me, let me know in the comments. If you're just hanging out, I also would love to know, what are you working on? Is it like doing journal time? Is it just hanging out, doing your laundry, whatever else? So the goal I'm going to put here is daily exercise. And after this, we want to start to brainstorm or kind of like, think about, ruminate on what possible challenges could come up that would not, like, essentially prohibit me from doing this. Given the fact that this is a daily exercise goal, then it's like, what would stop me from doing my exercise on any given day? What could happen that would hold me back from doing that? If you're thinking about a goal that isn't so much like a daily habit building one, but more so like a long term kind of like project or something like that. So let's say one of my ones is like fixing the shower. That's a project that I don't personally have like super heaps of control over because I'm not the one who's out there like chiseling the grout away or, redoing the silicon or anything like that. Maybe things that could be holding me back from that is not having the tradespeople get in touch with me or not having them show up at appropriate times or anything. So it's like, all right, well, then what could I actually do to make it so that either that doesn't happen or it's less likely to happen? And that's the next stage. Anyway, so if we're thinking about possible challenges, what possible challenges do you foresee for the goal that you have set for yourself? And we want to try and keep these realistic. We don't want to start being like, oh, a meteor is going to fall on my house and break my walking pad. Because, like, if that happens, I feel like I'll have bigger issues. Like, the fact that there's a meteor that was big enough to destroy my house, oh my gosh, probably won't happen. But other things that could happen is like, what if my walking pad breaks, right? So, because that is the thing that I'm using for daily exercise. So, walking pad breaks. Or I get sick. Or I get injured. Which is a little bit more likely than the walking pad breaking. It is new. If it broke like within 3 weeks of getting it, well, first of all, I'd be pretty damn pissed. But secondly, I just don't think that's going to happen. Injured, right? What else could hold me back? I, quotation marks, don't have time. This is everyone's favorite excuse, which, like, yes. And I know you're sitting there very offended, like, Jessica, I don't have time. How dare you come from my excuse of I don't have time? It's less about not having the time and more so other things are priorities. And I think it's like more powerful and gives you more autonomy to just be able to say it in that way. Instead of saying I don't have time, it's like, no, I have allocated my time differently. Then that was a choice. And then it's better for you in terms of being able to make your own decisions. We like being able to make our own decisions. We don't like it when other people make decisions for us. Grr, arg. Let's see. What stopped me for the first 2 weeks of July was vertigo. Cannot work out with vertigo. No. Yeah, definitely not standing exercise. I've heard of like sitting exercises and such, but I'm not too sure about how they actually work. I don't know if they would be helpful for vertigo, but yeah, you bought a walking pad and the on-off switch doesn't work at all. I have to unplug it and turn it off. It's a small thing, but dang. Yeah, that's very, very frustrating, isn't it? So once you've brainstormed your challenges, once you have essentially anything that is realistic, like it could actually happen, it could actually be a problem, written down on your list, then we want to think about two possible things here, right? One of them is how do we limit the possibility of this actually happening? How do we make it so that this is less likely to happen? And then secondly, what do we do if it does happen, right? So first one is how can I make this less likely? Alrighty, so the walking pad breaks. How can I make it so that it is less likely that the walking pad ends up broken? Well, one of them is don't be a tosspot. Use the equipment the way you're supposed to. Like if the walking pad's gonna break, in the assumption that there's nothing just like, lurking beneath the surface that's just waiting to like, spring a cog or anything like that, as long as I treat the equipment with the respect that it deserves, probably it won't break. Okay, so treat the walking pad well. The next one we have is I get sick. So how can we make it less likely for us to get sick? Now, obviously, a lot of sickness isn't specifically within our control, but there are things that we can do. Like, if it is cold and flu season, like it is where I am, maybe don't go out to events where there are a whole heap of people. I'm not saying like limit your life here. I'm just saying that like if you're going to go out to events with a whole heap of people, what precautions could we take to ensure that we are less likely of getting sick? So it could be like, don't hang out with people that you genuinely know are sick. I'm one of those people who's like, I don't care that my friend is sick. We've already organized to have plans together. I'm going to go hang out with them anyway. Not a great idea if you don't want to get sick because you want to do your daily exercise. But anyway, so it could be, vitamins and supplements. Great point. All right. Making sure that, you've got your vitamin C so that your immune system has a fighting chance and all of these kind of things. Not a doctor. Don't take this as official advice, but like, making sure that you have that healthy diet to go along with it so that your body can do the thing it needs to do when the sickness tries to infiltrate the body. So, maintaining what I'm going to put is quotations, good eating for fighting sickness. And avoiding sick people, which sounds rude, but hopefully you guys get what I mean. Avoiding people who could get me sick. Get me sick. It could be, making sure that you're washing your hands after you've been going out and about. Like you go to do the grocery shopping or something, and you're like touching the trolley and, you're putting things on the conveyor belt and all of this kind of stuff. Like these high touch areas that people who maybe haven't washed their hands have touched. Making sure we're washing our hands after those kind of things. Yeah. And like Janet said, don't forget to rest when you need it. Ensuring that the body gets sufficient rest so that then it can do the whole like fight off infections type thing that it needs to do. Right. So all goods for that. I get injured. How can we make it less likely that we get injured? Again, don't be a tosspot. Like, use the equipment the way you're supposed to. Don't jump down the stairs when you haven't jumped for the last 15 years. We were doing an experiment in my household the other day of how high people could jump. I fell over backwards when I tried to jump. It was, I wouldn't say it's embarrassing. I wasn't embarrassed by it. It was kind of funny, but I was just like, oh, Jessica, your balance is terrible. But so it's avoiding situations that would cause me bodily harm. Avoiding situations where I could get injured. Now, a lot of these things, you're probably sitting here thinking yeah, no shit, of course, I already do that. Why is this going to be something that I need to plan for? This stage in particular, oftentimes we're already kind of doing these things, but we're not necessarily consciously paying attention to them. So just being able to highlight the fact that this is something that you are doing so that you can achieve the goal that you've set for yourself is just another way to kind of incentivize you to do it as well. Yeah, places of employment and OHS ask for them for a reason. Yeah, they do. Yeah. The first time you're doing something that could come with a chance of injury, do a safety assessment. Excellent choice. Yeah. So it's making sure that you're paying attention to situations that could cause you bodily harm and trying to avoid those situations or trying to approach them in a way that means that you are less likely to get injured. And like we said, if you're using a walking pad, make sure that you use the walking pad appropriately, like putting on shoes rather than being I don't need shoes. And then you fall off the back of it and your toe gets caught underneath the plastic thing and it hurts and it's not a good time. Ask me how I know. Anyways, so in terms of this, the other one is I don't have time. All right. So if you find that it is a possible challenge that you foresee happening is that you won't have time to do this daily action, because I'm looking at a daily goal here, then the biggest thing we can do here is actually just literally schedule it in. All right. And if it's really important to you, put it in first, right? This is my sectioned off, protected time to work on this thing or do this thing. That is how I can make it so it's less likely that I won't have time for it. So, schedule exercise time in advance. Now, one of the possible challenges that you might have identified with yours could have been not so much I don't have time, but I prioritize other things over it, and thus there is not time to allocate to it. So then it's like, well, how can I make that less likely? And that idea of putting it in first and prioritizing it to be the first thing that gets dropped on your schedule, then maybe that could be something that you put in. What if your biggest challenge with any goal is consistency? As soon as I decide something is a goal or a habit I'd like to build, Rebel Brain comes in like a wrecking ball and says no. I completely understand that feeling, especially when your brain starts to feel like you're like telling it what to do. It's like, you're not my manager. How dare you try and control me? You don't have enough gym badges, type of a thing. And it's one of those kind of situations where we kind of want to reframe it as a like very much a choice and giving yourself as much choice and flexibility with it, but still getting it done. So, for instance, one of the things that I have done in terms of exercise in particular is when I was just starting, I made it so that the bar was super, super low. So there was a lot of flexibility so that Rebel Brain didn't start kicking in and like kicking and screaming at me or anything. So rather than saying, like, you have to do 30 minutes of exercise and it has to be on the elliptical and you have to be like profusely sweating gym bra when you're done and you have to be out of breath, like, if I made it all of these have tos and shoulds, then Rebel Brain would be like, no, we're not doing it. You can't make me. Instead, what I essentially said to myself is just like I would like to do some daily movement. And I didn't really care what type it was. I decided to go super, super easy and just be like, I am going for a walk. Like, there is no required length of the walk in terms of time or distance or time of day or anything, but we're going to go for a walk. So that can be one way that you kind of help with like kind of like subduing the rebel brain, making it so that the rebel brain doesn't kick in and start to hold you back from that kind of daily consistency, is just make it so that it's like super flexible for yourself. Also, another thing you can do is just making it so that it's just a really easy thing. Like, it's a specific thing, but it's an easy thing. So again, daily exercise being the example we're doing here, rather than saying I have to do 30 minutes, it could just be like, I have to do 2. Because like 2 minutes is the equivalent of like putting something in the microwave kind of a thing. So it's like, hey, I put something in the microwave, I walk around the kitchen a little bit. There we go. I got some daily movement in, kind of a thing. Those kind of things can be very, very helpful for just doing a little bit. Because oftentimes what we have is that we put ourselves in this mindset of like, oh, it's so small, it doesn't count. I'm like, yeah, but if you're currently doing 0 and you go to the tiny thing, that is a huge amount of improvement. Like, mathematically, that is like an infinite amount of improvement, kind of a thing. So doing the tiny thing, at least even to just build us up into the habit of doing the thing at all, can be very helpful. Your 3 goals are vague but achievable. 1, move. 2, eat. 3, water. Love it. Nice. You were just stopping by as you were watching your reset? Oh, nice. Well, I'm glad that you were enjoying the reset, catching up and finish the August setup early. Oh, well, I hope that you're having a good time. We're having a good time here too. So, in terms of the second part of this, because like we said, we want to consider the challenge in terms of how can we make it less likely, but also if it does happen, what should we do? Or like, how can I respond? If we pre-plan our responses here, it's more likely that we end up taking an action or taking a response that is going to serve us better, rather than, challenge, fall off. Challenge, nah, I'm not going to do it. Challenge, guess this goal isn't for me, right? We don't want that to happen, because that means that all of the progress you've already made feels wasted. We don't like wasted effort. Like, this is one of those instances where we really want to lean into the sunk cost fallacy and be like, no, I've spent time, effort, and energy on this, and I shall be continuing. So, if this does happen, I don't want to write should. How would I like to respond? Respond. All right. Okay. So, if we're thinking about this challenge as, actually occurring or something, what is it that you would like to be doing, or what is it that you would like to respond with, rather than some kind of alternative that isn't aligned with the future that you foresee of yourself, kind of a thing. Okay, so if the walking pad breaks, what am I going to do to make it so that my goal can stay alive? Like, what am I going to be able to do to keep the daily exercise dream going? All right. Well, for me, I'll probably revert back to what I was doing before the walking pad, which is just doing laps around my kitchen. It was very unglamorous, but it did get me where I wanted to go. technically, which is nowhere because it's literally just me going around my kitchen island and then around my living room and then around my kitchen island and then around my living room on repeat for 30 minutes. Wasn't exciting, but at least it was getting my steps in. It was getting my exercise done. Yeah, literally walk around the house. And the nice part about it being around my house is that, like, I don't have to go out into the cold. I don't have to go and put official, like, walking shoes on and, like, walk up hills and stuff because I live in New Zealand and it's hilly as heck. I don't have to get, like, rained on or whatever. So it's, like, making it very easy for myself, right? I'm getting the movement in, but it's in the comfort of my own home. I don't feel judged. The world isn't watching me get all, like, out of breath because I can't walk up a hill or anything like that. Just in my home, all right? So if the walking pad breaks, walk around the house. Now, notably, not everybody can do that. But then again, this goal is my goal. Your goal is your goal, right? So walk around the house. Or if I'm feeling adventurous and the weather is nice, maybe I'll go outside or something. But in terms of that one, what else we could do is, like, well, the walking pad is broken. Get the walking pad fixed. It would be good, possibly, like, if you foresee this as being a genuine, like, potential problem, is already kind of having a very base knowledge of where you might be able to take that. So whether that's, like, do I take it back to the shop that it, like, was sold to me from? In my case, no, it was bought online, so it's not going to work. But I could get in touch with a local kind of, like, exercise equipment seller because they will probably have people that they use to, get repairs done and such. So I'm not saying that we want to, like, add homework to ourselves, like, oh, on the off chance that the walking pad breaks, I'm going to go and do, like, 30 minutes of research into the perfect place to take it to get fixed, because that might end up being, like, quote, quote, wasted effort, but it can make you feel a little better knowing that you have that kind of safeguard. So light. I'm going to do light research. Light research into walking pad repair people. Repairers? Question mark? Is that a word? I'm going to say that it's a word, but let's see. Next stream, hopefully one of your reading sprints. Reading sprints typically only happen once a year, so the next one will probably be in May. So, in terms of our next one, though, if I get sick to the point where it's like I can't really do daily exercise, then maybe I just, listen to the body and let it recover. Because if I push myself in that instance, then there's a possibility that I end up just making myself take longer in terms of my recovery. Genuinely depends on the type of sickness, though. Right? So if there's a type of sickness that I have, like maybe I've got the snuffleupagus cold or something like that, and I feel like I can't do my typical half hour, can I do 10 minutes or something? Or can I do it on, like, super easy breezy beautiful mode where I go very, very chill with it? So rather than, like, fast-paced walking, is it like a super, super leisurely scroll? So we're just gonna write sick, make it super easy exercise, or make it shorter, or take intentional rest. Depends on the level of sickness, right? It's a tiered system here. Take the rest you need, right? Just because the goal is daily exercise doesn't mean that I can't pick that back up once I'm feeling better. The most important part is going to be making sure I pick it back up when I'm better and not letting that kind of, like, tail of not exercising get super, super long, because that's going to start building a new habit of not exercising. I want to make sure that I'm, like, getting back on that horse as quick as possible. Not to say that I use a horse for my exercise, but you get the idea. So in terms of this, though, we have I get injured, all right? If I get injured to an extent where my typical exercise is not doable, like, let's just say I injure my leg, my one is walking, so, like, if my leg is injured, then what else could I do that moves, like, the rest of the body but does not affect the leg, or does not kind of, like, make the healing of the leg take more time, or limits the healing of the leg, or anything like that? So is there kind of any, like, upper body work that I could be doing that doesn't really affect the lower body quite as much? Maybe I have to start looking at upper body weight routines or something, or maybe I'm just doing some simple stretches for the upper body or whatnot. So if I am injured, Rather than just throwing baby out with the bathwater, I could just focus on intentional exercises that are for other parts of the body that allow the injured spot to heal. Let the injury heal. And gradually bring back. Typical exercise. In the assumption that, like, maybe I got injured while doing the exercise or something like that. And then it's like, okay, well, if the exercise caused the injury, then I want to make sure that when I go back to doing the exercise, I don't just jump in with the same amount of like effort I was doing, because I'm just like, oh gosh, like gonna end up doing myself a re-injury. We don't want that. We do not want to re-injure ourselves, because then it's like, cool, now the injury is going to take even longer to heal because you didn't let yourself heal properly or whatnot. We don't want it to be like an ongoing thing because we keep on like re-injuring ourselves. Not ideal. Okay, so if the case of I don't have time happens, all right, this probably means that I haven't done the scheduling the time in advance for it. But it could also just be that like something came up, life be lifing, that kind of a thing. So again, it would be one of those things where I would probably just endeavor to make it shorter, because some is better than none, right? 2 minutes is still infinitely more than 0 minutes, right? So if it is the timing thing, time, make it shorter, right? The time one in particular is really good for those time-based goals or time-based actions related to goals. Like if you've told yourself like, okay, I want to write a book or something like that, and you're like, okay, I'm going to spend 30 minutes every day writing this book, or you're typing words out or whatever, and you could never find a 30-minute block in your day, 5 minutes, still infinitely better than 0 minutes, right? Mathematically speaking, infinitely better. So just lowering the expectation on yourself can be something that we do there, because then it still keeps the dream alive. It still makes it so we're writing daily, but we haven't kind of like held ourselves to this standard that we're actually just finding way too difficult to meet. All right. So this is just the general kind of structure here. It's like, what is the goal? What are the possible challenges? How can I make it so that they're less likely to happen? And if they do happen, how would I like to respond? Then when they actually come to fruition or whatever, hopefully not. Hopefully the challenges that you've outlined you don't actually face. And then all of this was just a brain exercise. But in terms of these things actually happening, you'll now have a plan in order to keep you on track with making progress, as opposed to just being like, oh, too hard, fell off, goodbye goal, fainted, sad face. Does anybody have any questions in particular about this? We're going to look through another example. If you guys have an example that you wanted me to work through, do let me know, because I think that like this one is obviously very much like a daily action type goal, but we also have goals that don't necessarily require specifically daily actions. They might be more project-based kind of goals where it's like we have a range of actions, but they're not the same thing on repeat or something. Like daily exercise is like exercise, obviously. Whereas other ones are more like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. But also, don't forget, tink, good to have drinks. Reminds you of storygraphs, just 1 page a day. Nah, it's a good one. Alrighty, can't think of anything, but what about hobbies? Yeah, we could do one related to hobbies. So I have a hobby-related goal currently. My hobby-related goal is to find new hobbies, or in particular, offline hobbies, which I have not done a lot of work on yet because I have been doing other things. But of course, I want to make sure that I am making progress on it. So my one is like find a fulfilling, non-monetized hobby. So something I don't feel compelled to like go and put on the internet and turn into content or whatnot. The range of steps versus repetitive steps is what gets your ADHD hung up. Yeah, I find that for if you've got the type of ADHD that makes it so that repeated type thing, like daily exercise, like, oh god, I have to do the same thing every day, I'm so bloody bored. Making it so that you have flexibility in how you can do the thing can be very helpful. So for me, I find that now as I'm in the routine of walking, I'm fine with it. But when I first started, I was like, I'm so bored. This is so lame. What else could we do to kind of like, put a check in the box? So it could be like dancing, or it could be yoga workouts, Pilates. It could be like there is a bunch of different ways to move the body. Obviously, that's just one example. There are other things as well. It could be instead of the activity changing, if it's the type of thing where the activity can't change, it could be the setting or placing of that activity that changes. So it's like, okay, I'm going to write a book, which just means smashing out words into my computer, or maybe I could take them down in a notebook, or maybe I could go to a coffee shop if that's the kind of thing that won't distract me and do my work there. So it's like I get some novelty in the setting or placing of having done the thing, even if the activity itself is kind of the same. Or you could, if you're working on a book, say, maybe Tuesdays and Wednesdays I look at characters, and then Mondays and Fridays I look at plot. Can you tell I've never written a book? I'm just like pulling words out of nowhere here, but hopefully the idea kind of makes sense. So I know you missed the start, but you'll be catching up. All good. Some messages above. Sorry for the paragraphs. Yeah, if you send me a paragraph at this kind of thing, I'm not usually that inclined to read it, to be honest, because I'm just like, we're working through something here. But in terms of another one, let's see. We were going to do one related to possibly hobbies. So goal. Yeah, like goals. This is goal. There we go. The goal is to find a new hobby. There we go. All good. No. It's just because I find it very difficult to keep up with chat in general, because I am my mind runs at a very fast pace, and sometimes I get myself tripped up on my own thoughts. So if I try and read other things, then I start to get myself super, super tripped up, and then I'm just like stumble, fall. Me in a ditch. So possible challenges for this one. Possible challenges. Okay, so one of the things that I have already found challenging for finding a new hobby is that I don't have time for it. No, well, technically, yeah, but one of the things that I found is that just my mind is limited in terms of what I consider to be like the possibilities of hobbies. When I first put my like week 1 video together, people were like, "Oh, why don't you try XYZ, bird watching, all of this kind of thing?" And I was just like, I haven't even thought about that, right? So my knowledge is limited. And I think that this is something that can definitely hold a lot of people back with a lot of different things. Like if I was trying to write a book, my knowledge would be limited. I have no idea how to write a book. I have never written a book. It feels very new. It feels very scary. Which if you kind of take second order thinking here, it's like, okay, my knowledge is limited is the first order thinking, the first thing. But then the second order is like, well, what does that mean? What is the second challenge that appears because you don't know things, or like you don't have a lot of knowledge or experience in that area? So coming back to the kind of book example, I've never written a book, right? So I do not know how to write a book, kind of a thing. So I do not necessarily know how much time it takes to write a book, or I don't necessarily know how to develop a story very well, or those kind of things. So it's all of those kind of things that I don't know that come under this one thing of my knowledge is limited. Challenge about finding new hobbies is knowing when to stop. I'm a serial hobby collector. Yeah. That kind of feeling of like always searching for something new. Getting on the always searching or always collecting spiral. A lot of goals fall victim to this as well. Like, because we feel like we don't know enough, we get into this mindset of like, well, now I need to know everything so that I can actually do the thing. I'm not going to be able to take any action because I don't have the perfect plan, because I don't know enough. So I need to know enough, which means I need to know everything so that I can make the perfect plan, so that I take the perfect action, so that then my goal gets to like its end outcome as fast as possible. But because we never start, because we're always looking for more information, it means that we're kind of like working against that kind of like personal request that we put on ourselves, I suppose. Yes, very good points. Accessibility limitations, physical, location, financial. So what is it? It's the only hobbies I want to do. Only hobbies I want to do aren't accessible. All right, so what, like, in terms of the accessibility, kind of like Chaotic Pixie's already unpacked there, there's a lot of different ways something could be non-accessible. So it's like maybe financial constraints, or it could be time constraints, or maybe it's like space. Maybe you just do not actually have the space to do the thing that you want to do. Like, oh, hey, I want to do like poured paint pictures or something, but I live in a one-bedroom apartment with no like adequate floor space to be able to like cover it with a tarpaulin so that I don't get paint on my floor or whatever. Like those kind of things. Also, poured paint pictures are so cool, and I totally want to try it one day. But anyway, so yeah, the research part is where we get stuck a lot as well. We recently did a newsletter about the research part. I think that was last week's newsletter, and thinking about how to get out of that. I don't think it was last week's; it was the week before, wasn't it? Because last week was about decluttering, getting my weeks mixed up. But yeah, the research stage is where a lot of good goals go to die, which is always quite unfortunate. Yeah, me wanting to do a loom weaving or pottery, but living in a condo. Yeah, literally that, eh? So in terms of those kind of things, other possible challenges, we could do the time one again. So it's like not having time to try or do the hobbies. And we've already kind of looked at that one. Like, you know, what if I don't have the time? Then scheduling it in and stuff, that can also be very, very helpful for both the hobby work as well. Like, just because it's a fun thing doesn't mean we can't put it on our calendar. I like putting fun things on my calendar. It gives me things to look forward to. Smallest barriers to entry, like making jewelry, has a ton of things you need to have. Exactly. Like maybe it's just like the supplies. Sunk cost. What if I start a hobby and hate it? Yes, that one's a big possibility. Like, what if I get all the things and then hate the hobby? Yeah, definitely a possibility there, which is always such a bummer. Like I recently bought a new game for the Xbox. I played it once, and then I was like, yeah, I think it's actually I'm done with it. I might just sell it on. But I'm glad I didn't leave it kicking around my house, feeling guilty about having the item. Because oftentimes what I would do is like I'd bring a new game into my collection, I'd play it a little bit and be like, oh, I don't know if this is for me. And then I just let it sit there in my game collection for another 2 to 3 years, and then be like, oh, cool. Now it has depreciated in value significantly and I haven't played it. So it's like I should have just gotten rid of it when I decided I didn't like it, which I have recently done. So I'm feeling very positive about that. Round of applause for me. Personal applause. There we go. Yeah. Pitfall was buying all the fancy tools and then burning out before starting. Yeah, this is exactly the same way that I play The Sims. Like I will design the character, design the house, get like really into the design process, and then I'll move the sim into the house and be like, yeah, no, I don't care. Like, like I'm done with you. I'll play like 1 week of gameplay or whatever and just be like, yeah, no, I'm not feeling it. I'm gonna go like do something else. Long live the Game Pass for Xbox for trying games. Yeah, exactly. And this is one of those things that we can do to kind of safeguard ourselves, right? It's like how can I try before I buy? How can I test things out without spending a lot of resources up front? Yep. Yeah, it's also a valid way to play, just building the stuff as well. But all right. So obviously there are a lot of other possible challenges that could come up with this. But our next question, like we had last time, all right? So it's like, how can I make it less likely? So make it less likely. All right, so my knowledge is limited. How can I make it so that the challenge of my knowledge being limited is less likely to hold me back? All right. So remembering here that sometimes we do fall in that kind of spiral of like, I need to go and get all of the knowledge. I need to do all of the research. I need to look up every single possible hobby option under the sun so that I can pick the perfect hobby for me, so that then I don't waste any time, effort, or energy on hobbies that aren't going to fulfill me. Not likely at all, especially because we're constantly changing. You know, like the person you are now is very different to the person you were like last year, or even possibly at the start of this year. Like, you know, life has been lifing and such. So your personal preferences and such, they have changed in some way. Not like maybe hugely drastically, but sufficiently enough that going and doing 72 hours of research into hobbies or more, like straight, it's not a great way to spend that time, right? So knowledge is limited. It's like do research. Do research that is time bound and with specific targets. Okay, we're not just going to drop you into the wonderful World Wide Web and be like, cool, go research hobbies. That won't be very helpful. So what I find is much more useful is figuring out what kind of questions do I have to start with? Like, what are the guiding questions that I'm trying to find answers to for my research? So in this case, it's like, what possible hobbies are out there? What hobbies are good for people who like XYZ, kind of like basing it on your past enjoyances. Enjoyances is a word now. I'm coining it. So like essentially having yourself give yourself some like guiding things that you want to find the answers to rather than just saying do research. Also, like we've noted here, time bound, right? We're not just going to give ourselves an open-ended amount of time to do the research because otherwise that will let us kind of like lean into that perfectionistic tendency of trying to find all the information, find the perfect hobby. Yep. Also, thinking about where you're going to be doing that research. I like this one. Find a guild or a shop that offers classes. Yeah, that one's going to be great. Finding friends who do a hobby, asking people who know you what they would recommend, right? Just dropping yourself on the internet sometimes is like, cool, I'm opened up to the opinions of literally everybody who has a computer or a smartphone or a tablet, which doesn't always give us the best advice, right? They don't know us as people. They don't know a lot about us and our situations. So maybe there are other places that you could go and find that information out. So doing the research and getting out of that search spiral, making sure that it is time bound, we have specific targets or questions we're trying to answer for ourselves, right? And who, like who or where will I research? Get research from. Nice. Alrighty. So, other things to note down. The only hobbies I want to do aren't accessible. Like, well, okay, if that's going to be something that's possibly going to hold you back, how could you make them more accessible? Instead of going and buying all of the things for jewelry making or pottery or poured paint pictures or whatever, could you find a class or a workshop or something like that that allows you to kind of play with those materials without having to purchase them for yourself? Is there a kind of like lower level version that is more like financially available to you? That could be like instead of going and buying all of these paints yourself or something, going to one of the ones that like is those like, I really love the idea of those art and wine nights, like paint and sip or whatever. So like, hey, instead of going and buying all the paints and all of the canvases and then setting up a space in my physical home, like for that stuff, going somewhere else and doing the thing. Like, that could be a good idea. Rather than paying for a class, you could also find them online. There are so many classes and tutorials on YouTube or on other kind of like apps like, Skillshare, and everybody has a free trial of Skillshare nowadays. So I'm sure you could find one. So finding, quote, try before you buy. Methods for testing the hobby. This also allows you to avoid the issue of what if I get all the things and I hate the hobby, right? So you effectively get to test out whether you do enjoy the hobby or you enjoy that kind of creative process. If it's a creative hobby, it doesn't even have to be like a super creative hobby or anything like that, but being able to test it out with kind of like less of the worry that it's like, oh, I bought all of the stuff. Is there a friend that has the materials that you could like test out or try out? So like, maybe if you're thinking about getting a Nintendo Switch and you're gonna start playing Animal Crossing or whatever. You're like, that looks like a great cozy hobby. I'm gonna love this. If your friend has that game, ask them if you can test it out. Maybe you'll find that you actually don't like the gameplay at all and the mechanics are all off whack and you just don't actually enjoy it, because those kind of things can totally happen. What I find is that anytime I play an Assassin's Creed game and I finish it, I'm like, oh, that was a great story. I really loved that game. And I go to play the next one because I just enjoy Assassin's Creed. They usually have changed something and I start playing for about 10, 15 minutes. I'm like, oh, I hate this. It's different. Then I just put it down for another 6 months. Problematic. Yeah. Purchased a few of the hero arts kits to try something new. Yeah. And exactly. You can find these little kits and stuff that actually give you like small versions of all of the base materials. Also, that really helps with that kind of like research stage as well. Rather than having to figure out all of the stuff that you need for something, then you get a kit that gives you all the stuff you need. And if they have specific pieces that it's like, hey, you also need XYZ, they usually write that on the instructions. It's like, here is ABC, you need, the next 3 things or whatever. She forgot what comes after C. DEF, you need DEF. How does this system change for bigger goals like writing a book or a thesis? Well, in terms of that, then the challenges will be slightly different. So the big one is going to be like, the time thing. It's like, oh, I don't have the time to do the hobby or whatnot. Or sorry, I keep saying hobby because that's what we've been talking about. But the kind of process of actually doing the like, how do I make it less likely? And what do I do if it does happen? That kind of stays the same. It's just the specific challenges that you might face with that are going to look a little different. We can talk about that one next, though. So making it less likely for these things to happen, non-accessibility. It's like, well, how can we find the easy version of it? How can we find the pared down version of it? That type of a thing. Not having the time to try or do the hobby. Like we said, scheduling is a good one. Schedule. Mainly because if it is something important to you, right? And I know that like there's a laundry list of things that we want to do in life and stuff, and it can feel kind of demotivating to say like, oh well, if it was important to you, you'd make the time for it. I'm not here trying to like make you feel bad if you feel like you don't have the time for things. That is not the intention of this stream at all right? It's more so just giving you your power back and being able to say like, hey, you are, to an extent, in charge of the way that you spend your time, right? Yes, there are external expectations and stuff that also take our time away from us, but there is time in your day, pockets of your time that you do have control over. How do you want to spend it? Because I want you to feel empowered to spend your time the way that is actually going to align with the stuff that you want to do, whether that's finding new hobbies or doing your daily exercise or meditation or whatever else, right? And you might find that you get started with those things, they don't bring you a lot of joy, and you want to revert back to whatever else you were doing. It's cool. This is your life. I believe in your ability to live the life the way you want to live it. But in terms of this, though, making it less likely, that's one of the ways that we think about it. We also want to think about, like, if it does happen, how can we make it so it doesn't derail us? So, just like we had here, if this does happen, how would I like to respond? And that's not to say that we're going to respond this way every single time. We're not perfect, which is, a fundamental feature of being a human. Yay us. But in the ideal circumstances, how would we like to respond to this? And when I say the ideal here, I don't mean ideal as in like if I was 100% perfect and I didn't ever give in to temptation and nothing ever fazed me and I was unflappable or like whatever. More so it's like, in the ideal realistic situation where I have faced this challenge, how would I like myself to respond to it? Okay, so if it does happen, which hopefully if we implement these like making them less likely things, they're less likely to happen, they don't happen type of a thing. So it's like if you find that your knowledge is limited to a point where it's like, oh, I haven't been able to work on this goal, I haven't been able to find a new hobby because I just feel like my knowledge is super, super limited, try something. Literally anything that seems like it might be of interest to you. Because we can fall into that mindset of like, I need all of the information so I can make the perfect plan, so I can take perfect action, so I can make perfect progress. All right. If there is literally anything that has been of interest throughout your research that you've been doing or whatnot, then just pick something that sounds like it might be a new possible hobby for you and give it a go, right? Especially if you can give it a go in one of those like easy mode type ways where it's like, oh, I didn't have to spend a lot of resources. I didn't have to spend a lot of money or like, carve out a space in my home or, hire a shipping locker for all of the different things that I needed to collect for this hobby or whatnot. If you can try it in that kind of like easy mode version of the hobby, then it's like, okay, now as I've tried it, is this something I want to stick with? Is this actually something that sparks joy? A lot of the time, we're going to learn a lot more from doing than we are from prior researching, because by doing the thing, you get to highlight all of the things you just didn't foresee or that were not very obvious throughout your research. It's kind of like if you buy a house or whatever, you buy something new, a house, a car, like something that you were really excited to buy, and then you start using it and you're like, oh, okay, here are all the flaws that I didn't notice before. Like you buy a Cricut because you're like, I'm going to make my own stickers. And then you realize you actually have to learn how to make stickers and you're like, oh, okay, buying the Cricut didn't just magically make it so I knew how to make stickers type of a thing. It's like the stuff that we don't realize, or those kind of like, second order thinking type things that only become apparent from trying something. So if I find myself getting stuck into that mindset of like, oh, I have to like acquire all the knowledge and such, just try something because you're going to learn a lot about your personal preferences just through doing that. But anyway, so if they are not accessible, if you find that the ones that you really genuinely want to do just aren't accessible, then I guess it's just admitting defeat on it and trying something new. If you've already tried to make it easier, if you've tried to find somewhere or classes or whatever to try and do that thing, then maybe there's more in life that needs to change to allow for that, and maybe some of those changes just aren't within your control. So we can find something else that also gives us that same level of joy and go and pursue that hobby instead or something. Yeah. There's something to be said for looking back at what kinds of things you liked doing when you were a kid before societal expectations and life demands forced you to abandon what you love. That's a very good point as well. Like sometimes getting like back in touch with those things that did bring you joy when you were younger, those can be really good starts for hobbies as well. So if you find yourself getting trapped in that research stage, rather than looking outside for potential things that you could get into and get involved with to have that hobby that you're looking for or whatnot, maybe looking inwards and reflecting about stuff that used to fill you with joy. Like things that I used to do as hobbies. I used to do scrapbooking. I used to do jewelry making. I used to do card making. I haven't done a lot of those in quite a while. And it's kind of interesting now that like coming from that, like, scrapbooking, card making, sticking a whole bunch of things together and stuff. And now into my bullet journal, that's the kind of decorative style I'm leaning towards and finding a lot of joy in. It's like, oh, look, parallels. We love that. Yeah, try something adjacent to something you already know you like. Exactly. That could be another really good one. So it's like if you enjoy doing like you've said, like diamond painting, try cross stitch, growing plants, try pottery. And it's like, you can also double down in that area. So it's like, if you enjoy cooking, maybe you will also enjoy growing things to cook. If you enjoy like, I don't know, woodwork or something, then maybe you'll also enjoy resin art, because it's like you make the wooden piece and then you can add the resin over the top and stuff like this. I love my resin art pieces. They fill me with such joy. So let's see, not having time to do the thing, like we said, if it does happen, then we can kind of just lower the bar or lower the expectations. What does the like small version of your hobby look like? Very much depends on what the hobby is. Some hobbies do require a decent chunk of time, which can be a little bit tricky, but other ones you can find the small version of. So rather than doing the whole paint by numbers, maybe we just do like one color in one corner or something. Rather than reading the whole book, maybe we read 10 pages type of a thing. So do what I'm going to say, like time cheap as opposed to time costly version. The one that doesn't take a lot of time to do, right? So essentially the same process that we had before, though. We're just thinking about like, what is the goal? What are the possible challenges that can come with this goal? What is the kind of stuff that I foresee as genuinely potentially impacting my ability to do this thing? Because we don't want to start thinking about every single possible challenge under the sun, because that's just not going to be helpful. First of all, we'll be here all day and then you won't be able to get any hobby work done. And secondly, that just puts you in a very negative mindset and we don't want that at all. So What is the goal? What are the possible challenges? How can I make it so that those challenges are less likely to happen? And then if they do happen, how can I respond, or how do I want to respond so that then it keeps me on track with still reaching that goal? All right. So we had the request of doing one that's a little bit more like a big thing. All right. So like writing a book or writing a thesis. So we'll do a similar idea. So goal. Now I'm gonna need a lot of help here. So put your brain caps on. I don't know if a brain cap is a thing. Is it a thinking hat? It's been a hot minute since I was in primary school. But writing, it seems. Writing a book. Right? So let's just say you want to write a book. There's a story in your head that you want to get out, right? You want to tell the world about these characters and this place and setting and this plot that you've been lightly developing in your head. Or maybe you just like the idea of writing a book. I don't know. I'm not going to be writing a book. But what are the possible challenges? Now, definitely depends on what kind of book you're writing, I reckon, because some books are going to be more like, fiction, story-based, plot-driven, character-driven, whatever, whereas other ones are going to be non-fiction, which might mean research or interviews or whatever else. But what are some of the possible challenges that could come with writing a book? First one, my knowledge is limited. My knowledge is limited. There we go. And as we go through, also remember, tink, it's good to have a drink. Ooh, letting negative self-talk get in the way. Very that. Negative. Has an A in it, doesn't it? We could say my spelling would probably hold me back, but thankfully spell check totally helps. Oh, you could totally see my name on the spine of a book. That's very sweet. Well, negative self-talk. I mean, in terms of that kind of, people talk about visualization in terms of your goals and trying to, envision what success will look like. I think that if you are trying to write a book, envisioning your name on the spine of a book is a pretty good visual. That'd be pretty exciting. Like the philosophy of getting out of your own way. Yeah, that one can be a big one. I think a lot of goals suffer from that too, especially if you're working on a goal that you've been setting yourself for quite a while. You've been telling yourself year upon year, quarter upon quarter, depending on how long you've been working on it, that you want to do this thing and you just haven't been able to do it. That negative self-talk is like, oh, well, what's going to be different this time? You didn't do it the last 6 times you tried this. What do you think? Why do you think this one's actually going to be the time that you do it? I was like, wow, thanks, biggest critic. Didn't need that from you. Quiet in the cheap seats. Thanks. I'm out here doing awesome things. I've done hard things and I can do hard things and I don't need your negativity right now. But it can be very hard to tell yourself that in the moment. So, writer's block. Yep. Writer's block can totally hold us back from getting that book written, listening to others that you can't do it. Yeah, negative talk, self-talk, or negative talk from others. We're just going to write time because time is always there. Time/energy. Maybe you do have the time, like in the evenings after your regular 9 to 5, like the time is technically there, but you get home and you're just so mentally exhausted that you're like, I can't. Yeah. My knowledge is limited, thus I do not know where to start. Exactly. So many ideas. Yep, too many ideas. And there we go. Too many ideas for the plot. All right. Yeah. Especially, oftentimes creatives have more ideas than they can reasonably execute on, which can be a bit challenging to deal with. Time constraints. Yes, time and energy, but also deadlines. And missing those deadlines and missing check-in points and all of those kind of things, research struggles, especially beyond your control. Yeah. Things that are beyond our control is very challenging to deal with in terms of a challenge. The challenge is challenging. Who would have thunk it? But oftentimes with the challenges that we foresee, even if they are outside of our control, we can make the potential issues surrounding them less likely to happen. Like, missing a deadline, for instance, that is a very real and very like, problematic kind of situation to be in. But there are still things within our control that we can do to safeguard ourselves from that happening. Not necessarily ensuring it doesn't happen, all right? We're not saying that there's no possibility at all if we take steps A, B, C, or whatnot, but we can make it so that it is much less likely to happen. Yep, overthinking, like what if no one will publish it before even starting? Yeah. Overthinking. Alrighty. So, once you brainstorm your challenges, though, just like we did the last times, all right? So, it's what is the goal? What are the possible challenges? And what are we going to do to make it so those things are less likely? Make it make sense. Make it less likely. Alrighty, so what could we then do? And again, depends on the goal you're working on, depends on what actually kind of resonates with you as an individual, because this is why I like systems like this. They are structured but flexible. Like, we can use this structure for any type of goal, but the actual things we end up writing down are going to be different depending on us, depending on the goal, depending on what we actually foresee as being a challenge to us, because some challenges are not going to be the same, even for the same type of goal. Like, if you and I both have a goal of, like, I don't know, finding a new hobby or exercising daily or anything like that, the challenges that I will have are going to be different to your challenges. Like, if we think about this one, possible challenges, my walking pad breaks. If you don't exercise on a walking pad, that is not a challenge that applies to you. All right. So, like, yeah, sure, you could write it down, but you're like, oh no, Jess's walking pad broke. Like, that doesn't change anything for you. But anyway, so in terms of making these less likely, how can we make it so that that negative self-talk or that talk from others is going to be less likely either to happen or is going to be less likely to derail us? So negative self-talk being less likely to happen. I know that a lot of people talk about the idea of like a gratitude type mindset. And I know everybody like eye rolls. I am that person. I am also sitting here eye rolling with you like, ugh, gratitude. But they tell us to do it for a reason. It's like, I saw a post recently that was like, I'm like so offended. The audacity, like the fact that eating nutritious foods and doing daily exercise actually makes my mental health better. I'm offended by it. I'm like, I feel you. But so in terms of that negative self-talk, like the kind of things that you could do possibly to avoid that or to make it so that it's less likely is to do things like a ta-da list or a like the daily win or something like that. It's that really kind of intentional practice of highlighting the progress. So intentionally highlight your progress and wins. All right. So that negative self-talk, depending on what it is in particular you're talking negatively to yourself about, it could be like, oh, I'm not a good writer. Like, this is taking you too long. The words don't just flow easily. Why do you have to keep on like replanning this section of the book or anything like that? Thinking about it in terms of more of a like, what does this show about me that is positive? So it's like, if you keep rewriting a section of the book rather than just being like a why can't you get this right mindset, it's I love that you care so much about the finished product. Like, you're seeing this as very much like a positive thing. So in terms of like perfectionistic tendencies, I do like to try and frame that for myself as like I love that you care about the outcome, as opposed to why is this taking you so long? Like that, because nobody beat themselves up to progress. And if they did, they probably didn't feel great about the progress they made anyways. And that's not what we want. Yeah. When touch grass works. Yeah, literally. I was told that they told me to go outside and like breathe fresh air and it actually worked and I hate it. Yeah. Talk about your writing struggles with others or people who have had the same struggles. So it's like, that could be something that we possibly do. So it's like, join a supportive writing group. right? And finding that writing group and finding the group of people that you wanna work with, it's, important that you make sure that it actually aligns with what you need and such. It's kind of like if you have, like, a writing buddy or an editing buddy or something, they need to be the kind of people who actually give you feedback in a way that feedback can actually be taken, and they're also giving you feedback aligned with what you want. I'm not saying that they need to be like, "Oh, everything is awesome. No notes. Everything is great," when it's not. It's more so they are giving you the feedback in such a way that is actually going to help you make the best product possible. Yeah, because a book is a product. It's like an outcome type thing. Um, like, there's no point in finding an editing partner who has only ever done, like, non-fiction books to help you write a book that is like a romantasy serial novel kind of series or whatever. Like, they don't really match up very well. Like, even if they're a really good person or, like, very, very good writer in their own respect, they're not necessarily gonna give you the best advice for what you're working on. Like, grains of salt here. Maybe they're awesome, but in general. So cool to be watching a live stream when you're actually visiting in New Zealand. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you for making this much needed video. The timing's impeccable. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, because I've been feeling this week in a little bit of a slump in terms of my goal work. I think especially coming off last week where it was like, hey, let's declutter the whole house. And that was like one big project all at once. So I got to this week and I'm just like, oh, now what? Like, there's still plenty of things I want to work on, but also we have stuff holding over from last week. So it's like, oh, I wanted to work on XYZ, but I still haven't got the decluttered items out of my house. I've gotten a decent chunk of them out of my house, but it's like this kind of problem solving or like challenge planning kind of method. It's like, okay, these are the things you want to do. What are the challenges? How can we make them less likely? What can we actually do to help ourselves moving forward? What about recruiting a beta reader who isn't a writer but interested in your books or topic? Yeah. And if in particular talk from others is something that's holding you back, maybe you need to find somebody who can be that like big cheerleader. Like, even though the even though they might not necessarily give the best editing feedback or whatever, they can still keep you feeling positive about the process or whatnot. So finding a supportive beta reader. Yeah. If you have too many ideas for the plot, maybe you can start planning out other books, but don't actually okay, again, grains of salt here. We don't want to start planning like 17 different books because then we're not really going to be making a lot of progress on any one individual book. But it's like, saving those ideas, saving them somewhere safe so that then you feel like they can still get their time in the sun or time on the pages or whatever, even if it's not necessarily in this story. Yeah, joining Sarah's rough draft challenge. All right, that's a great one. So join writing challenges or writing sprints or anything like that. Yeah. If it's the, like, overthinking and all of those kind of things, then this is another one where it's like capturing those ideas, can be a very helpful way of making sure that they feel heard. I guess, like, it's an interesting idea. We're, like, personifying the ideas here, but if we think about it in terms like a regular brain dump, right? The reason that we do a brain dump is to get thoughts out of our head to clear mental space for other things. It's like those things have been safely captured so our brain doesn't have to keep screaming them at us. When you've kind of walk into the kitchen or something and you see a bill on the kitchen counter, you're like, oh, I need to pay that. 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 And the brain just keeps on trying to tell you because for some of us, as soon as you leave that room, the brain will forget and then the bill won't get paid and then, chaos ensues or whatnot. So the brain kind of like is just gently reminding you in the back on repeat that you need to do the thing. So giving that idea or giving that task to a system that you can trust, whether that's your journal or a notebook or an online compendium or some digital system or whatever, somewhere safe that you trust with your ideas, like an ideas folder or anything, so that then those can be captured in a way that is safely stored. You can come back to them when you need to, but they don't have to continue to scream into your mind so that you don't forget the thing. So maybe that would be something. So having a space to safely capture ideas. Then, for instance, if we're doing like, too many ideas for the plot, we could do that kind of second order thinking. It's like, okay, well, if I do go with this particular scenario or whatnot, where does that lead? Like, does that lead our characters in the direction that I'm hoping them to go? Like, from the start to end point, like their transition or journey throughout this piece of media, because we're writing a book, but piece of media. I just like saying that because it gets me in a good habit. So that then when I make my reading journal videos, I say the right kind of terminology. But anyways, you can brain dump all your negative self-thoughts out too. Get them out. It's like, yes, brain, I see you, I hear you. Thank you for your time, effort, and energy thinking of these things. I'm going to put those to the side, aka the trash, and get on with life. All right. Sometimes what I like to think about in terms of negative self-talk is like, who is that coming from? So sometimes our negative self-talk is actually, it's somebody else, like somebody from our past or like childhood or whatever, that we've kind of like given them residence in our mind to say hateful things. And sometimes it is actually just us, but a little bit different. So it's like, maybe, for instance, like we'll talk about my inner voice or whatnot. My inner voice is Jess from a couple of years ago. And she is like, more than anything, she's just scared. She's just scared of like the fact that like she isn't going to live up to people's expectations and she's not going to live up to her own potential. So she wants to tear current me down so she doesn't feel alone. So it's like, oh, hey, it's okay that I didn't do amazing, wonderful, great things because current Jess didn't do amazing, wonderful, great things. So this kind of like scared past version of me is like trying to tear current me down. And if you can kind of personify it in that way, you can kind of see them and be like, I don't want to listen to you. Get out. Shoo. Similar idea with if it's like a different person in your life. Maybe it's like, the high school bully, or it could just be like somebody else that has kind of said negative or hateful things previously or whatever. And it's like, why now, as I know that this is the person who this is coming from, or now as this is the person that I've, built around these negative thoughts and whatever, why would I want to listen to you? Ew. I have things to do. I've got life to live here. Shoo. Kind of a thing. So, like you mentioned though, getting all of those negative thoughts out so that you can see them and you can unpack them a little bit and be like, alrighty, sure, whatever, and move on, can be quite helpful. Your first published writing was an essay on procrastinating writing. That exact essay. I love that. All right. So other things we could do to make it less likely, so like the time and energy thing, like we kind of mentioned, it's that scheduling. Also, in terms of the energy in particular, scheduling it for when you will have the mental capacity to do the thing. So if you know that you do not have the mental capacity after work to do the thing, then maybe you would like to build in some kind of like energy refilling or restoring kind of activity before you try and do the writing. So I think that the general recommendation here is that if you feel like your mental energy is limited, try doing something that uses physical energy. So it's like doing exercise to refill mental energy. Or if you have a lot of like mental energy but not a lot of physical energy, like then to refill your physical energy, go and do something that would use mental energy, if that kind of makes sense. Yeah, I'm contributing. Yeah, learn this from you. Know when your creative energy peaks and schedule writing sessions accordingly. Exactly. We love thinking about our energy cycles. It is just very helpful to place things that are aligned with those high energy like needs when the energy is higher. It makes sense. So in terms of if it does happen, right? So if it does happen. Alrighty. So if we find that the negative self-talk is going to be holding us back, maybe you should just get out of your own head. Maybe your voice isn't the one you should be listening to at that point in time. Go find a supportive person to tell you otherwise. And really just like digest and lean into the thoughts that they're telling you. Because sometimes, others, external people, whatnot, will say like, oh, you're doing so well, like, you're doing great things, rada rada, and then we just like don't believe it. Just put that to the side for a second. I think a lot of the time it's that idea of not wanting to toot our own horn. It's like, you know what, stuff it. Just allow them to toot the horn for you and just like lean into that, right? as one of your favorite tutoring tips. Study for 30 minutes, physical activity for 10. Works great. Never thought about it for hobbies and productive tasks. Yeah, it can be very useful for that as well. So if it does happen, if negative self-talk is getting in our way, find positive talk from others or ourselves. So for this one, what can be very useful to keep if you don't think that you're going to, like, at the drop of a hat be able to find somebody to give you the positive self-talk, is keep what I consider to be a compliment keeper. So essentially anytime that you get positive feedback from someone, whether that's like a message or an email or a DM or a comment or like whatever, save it. Save it in a little folder on your computer, even if it's not necessarily one where it's like you've screenshot something that they've said in a typed fashion. Maybe they like voiced it to you, like spoke at you with their mouth hole to you. Kind of a thing with their voice box. You can write that down after the fact, so that you can keep a kind of note of the fact that that positive feedback was given, and you can look through those as a way of saying like, hey, no, I do have positive voices in my life, and these are the kind of things that they have been saying about me and such. So that can be a really good one. Ooh, for writer's block, read. Yeah. Consume inspiring media, right? So if you're finding that you are just not able to write, maybe reading the words of other people, or whether those be like, reading, or it could be watching, because that's technically the words of other people. They're, dialogue and scene setting and all of that kind of stuff. Those type of things. Playing games, all those kind of things. Refilling your creative well can help you kind of get that creative spark back and help you with your writer's block. Could be a possibility. Of course, all of this really depends on the type of book you're writing, but big grains of salt here, general ideas. If you find that you get to a point where there are too many ideas for the plot, how can we explore those ideas without going to the extent of writing like really large sections of your book and then scrapping them or something like that? It could just be like a general storyboarding or outlining or something to see how things might progress if we go with that direction or something, and seeing if it takes you where you want to go or in a direction that actually makes sense for this particular book that you're writing. Deadlines was one that we kind of mentioned, but we haven't really talked about. Knowing in advance when your deadlines are, super great, but also breaking those deadlines down can be a really good way to make it less likely that you miss an overall deadline. So if the, like, I don't know, book deadline is November, then at which points do you want to have like certain sections of the book finished or certain parts of your process completed? Again, Jessica has not written a book, so the terminology is vague here, but hopefully you kind of get the idea. All right, give yourself 30 minutes to flesh out the idea with outlining and see how it plays out. Exactly. And time restricting or time boxing that thing can also be helpful. It helps us focus on the task at hand, and it also means it doesn't take all day. So if you have too many ideas for the plot and you're like, okay, well, I want them to do this, but I also kind of want to see this part. It's like, can we include both without the story becoming too muddled? Or do we have to go with one or the other? And what are they going to look like so that we can kind of compare the pair? Alrighty. Overthinking. All of this is overthinking, but it's really positive overthinking. This is overthinking that helps us. But hopefully you guys kind of get the idea, right? So for each of these, this is what I really do consider to be like the missing piece when it comes to goal planning. A lot of us are really good at figuring out what actions do we have to take in order to achieve the goal, what is it that we want to achieve or whatnot. But figuring out what kind of challenges we might face along the way and pre-planning for those challenges, like how can I make it less likely? What if it happens? And how am I going to respond to that in a way that's still aligned with my goals, means that we're going to make a lot more progress in the long run. We do have what I'm going to call like a simplified version of this. It's less tutorial based. It's more of just like the general principles. That video is already up on the channel. I'll link it in the end cards so that you guys can check it out if you want to. Otherwise, thank you for spending time with me. It's been such a pleasure, and I'll chat to you next time. Bye.